O Allah, there is nothing easy except what you make easy, and you make sorrow easy if you will. O Allah, teach us what benefits us, and benefit us with what you have taught us, and increase us in knowledge. O Allah, make all our deeds purely for your noble countenance, and do not let anyone else have any share in them. O Lord of the worlds, welcome, dear friends. May you be blessed, and may your steps be blessed, and may you have a place in paradise. We ask Allah, the blessed and exalted, just as He has gathered us in obedience to Him, to gather us in His paradise, the abode of His mercy, and the home of His honor. This is the new session of our series on the Prophet's biography. Upon him be the best of prayers and peace. In the previous session, we stopped at the Prophet's peace and blessings be upon him and his companions exit from the valley after 3 years of siege. We mentioned that the 10th year, which began with the Prophet's and his companions exit from the valley, was called by Muslims, historians, and biographers the year of sorrow because 4 severe events occurred in it for the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. The first of these events was the death of Abu Talib, the Prophet's uncle, peace and blessings be upon him, and also the death of his beloved wife, Khadijah bint Khuwaylid, may Allah be pleased with her. The third is the intensification of the harm inflicted upon the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, by the polytheists, reaching levels after the death of Abu Talib that they had not reached during his lifetime. This includes severe acts such as attempting to strangle the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, and throwing camel entrails at him. These events occurred after the death of Abu Talib, may God be pleased with him, as Ibn Kathir suggests in his work Al-Bidayah wa Nihaya. The beginning and the end, and his statement, aligns with other narrations. A fourth is the treatment the people of Taif gave the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, in the worst possible way. If you recall the map of their Prophet's life that we discussed, we mentioned that from the first year of the mission until the 3rd year, scholars called this the period of private or secret preaching, during which the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, selected those who were suitable to be pillars of this mission. We also mentioned that from the 3rd year to the 6th year, we call this the period of apparent weakness, when torture began to befall the Muslims who believed in the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. This began in the 3rd year of the mission. The public declaration of faith began, and then the pressure on Muslims increased. In the 6th year, we mentioned a significant leap forward for the Muslims of the conversion of Hamza and Umar. From the 7th to the 10th year, this was the period of siege. Then, from the 10th to the 13th year, it was mentioned that this period was called the search for new territory for the Islamic State, after it became clear that the people of Mecca had refused to embrace Islam, refused to make their land the land of Islam, and refused to be the backbone, the strength, and the supporters of Islam. Now, in the 10th year, the first thing that surprises us, as we said, is the death of Abu Talib. The narration that historians relate is that a delegation from the Quraysh learned of Abu Talib's illness and went to him to make one last attempt to persuade him regarding his nephew, our Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. They said to him, if Abu Talib died without making any concessions regarding Muhammad and without being able to restrain Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, then, if the Quraysh were to attack Muhammad after Abu Talib it would bring
أن
them
يقولوا اجترأوا على محمد بعد وفاة عمه.
shame to say that he dared to speak to Muhammad after his uncle's death, so they went to him and spoke to him. Abu Talib summoned his nephew, the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, and said to him, O my nephew, these are from your people, and they have come to give you something from themselves, and you give them something from yourself. He replied, Yes, by God, uncle, I only want one word from them, by which the Arabs will submit to them and they will rule the non-Arabs. The two most prominent men in the delegation were Abu Jahl and Abdullah ibn Abi Umayr. Abdullah ibn Abi Umayr ibn al-Mughira, as we mentioned, was from the Barnu Makhzum, and if you recall, he was the brother of Zuhair ibn Abi Umayr, who was involved in breaking the siege. Both of them were brothers of Hind bint Abi Umayr, who was Hind bint Abi Umayr, Salamah, may God be pleased with her, who later became the wife of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. Abu Jahl said, one word, 10 words. By your father, he said, say, there is no God but God, but he recoiled from it, recoiled from the word there is no God but God. When Abu Talib's illness worsened, the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said to him, O uncle, say, there is no God but God, a word that will intercede for me. I have a word for you that I can use to intercede for you with God, or a word that I can use to argue on your behalf with God. Then Abu Jahl, Abdullah ibn Abi al-Mughira ibn Abi Umayr ibn al-Mughira, said, Are you following and abandoning the religion of Abdul Muttalib? Every time the Prophet said this to him, they would say, abandoning the religion of Abdul Muttalib, abandoning the religion of Abdul Muttalib, until he said, rather, I am on the religion of Abdul Muttalib. In another narration, this narration is in the two Sahihs. In another narration in Sahih Muslim, Abu Talib said, By God, my nephew, were it not for what the people, were it not for what the Quraysh would say, he only said it out of fear, I would have gladdened.
تمام. يعني هو الآن كان خايف من إيه؟ أن يظن به أنه إنما قال لا إله إلا الله خوفا من الموت أو خوفا من المصير ما بعد الموت. طيب، حتى مات أبو طالب على ذلك، فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم
your heart, meaning he was afraid that they would think he only said there is no God but God out of fear of death or fear of the fate after death. So Abu Talib died in that state. Then the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said, May God have mercy on you and forgive you. By God, I will continue to seek forgiveness for you and pray for you until I am forbidden from doing so. So the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, continued to seek forgiveness for Abu Talib and to pray for mercy for him until God revealed the verse. In the 9th year of the Hijrah, that is, 12 years from the moment we are speaking, the verse was revealed. What was not, it is not permissible for the Prophet and those who believe to ask forgiveness for the polytheists, even if they were close relatives, after it has become clear to them that they are people of ignorance. And concerning Abu Talib, the words of God Almighty were revealed. Indeed, you do not guide whom you love, but God guides whom he wills, and God is most knowing of those who are guided. And concerning the first situation, which is the situation of argument, the words of God, blessed and exalted is he, were revealed sad by the Quran, containing the reminder, but those who disbelieve are in pride and dissension. How many generations we destroyed before them, and they cried out, but there was no escape, and they wondered that a warner had come to them from among themselves. Fabrication. Has the reminder been sent down upon him from among us? And this is arrogance. Has the reminder been sent down upon him from among us? Rather, they are in doubt concerning my reminder. Rather, they have not yet tasted my punishment. Or do they have the treasuries of the mercy of your Lord, the exalted in might, the bestower? Meaning, now who bestows prophethood and messengership from God the blessed and exalted? God knows best where he places his message. They were arrogant and disproved that God the blessed and exalted would bestow prophethood upon the one he chose from among us, the one to whom he revealed the reminder. So God responds to them, saying, do they possess the treasuries of the mercy of your Lord, the Almighty, the Bestower? Or do they possess the dominion of the heavens and the earth and all that is between them? Let them ascend to the heavens and choose whomever they wish. Meaning, let them ascend to the heavens and choose whomever they wish, and let them choose the
يبين لنا حقيقة العقيدة التي عند أبي طالب، وهي قوله بل على دين عبد المطلب. دي حقيقة الايه؟ حقيقة العقيدة.
messenger. So, truly, if we reflect upon this situation, we will derive many lessons. Firstly, this situation reveals to us the true belief of Abu Talib, which is his statement, rather, I am upon the religion of Abul Muttalib. This is the truth of the verse, the truth of the belief that he did not embrace Islam, peace and blessings be upon him, and remained his advocate, defender, and
في حياتنا المعاصرة الجماعة الحقوقيين مثلا، في ناس مؤمنين بحقوق
supporter. This
الإنسان إيمانا عظيما يدفعهم أن يدافعوا
great faith
عن
compels them
أي
to
مختلف عنهم طالما أنه
defend anyone who differs from them, as
يعني
long as their rights are violated. You might find this human rights advocate being an atheist, a liberal, a secularist, or even a man who respects the
فيحمله هذا على
law and
الدفاع
wants
عن
to apply it.
من
This
يخالفه.
compels him to defend those who disagree with him. This means that, while there are indeed some genuinely sincere individuals in this matter, there are certainly not many. Of course, there are many who exploit slogans, but those who are truly sincere are few. However, there are some, for example, among the leftists and communists, who are sincere in the revolution and in defending the revolutionaries, and many, in other words. Whoever follows this matter will find many liberals, human rights activists, legal experts, and revolutionaries who defend those who disagree with them on this issue. This is something the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, benefited from. The pre-Islamic aspect of Abul Muttalib's religion was something the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, benefited from. He was under the protection of Abu Talib and the Banu Hashim, due to this tribal, clan-based, pre-Islamic tribalism. As we mentioned before, we reiterate that no reformer, no preacher, no one with a message has ever failed to utilize the available resources and laws of their time, even if they came to contradict these laws
حتى لو هو جاء بضد هذه القوانين أو جاء لكي يمحو هذه القوانين وينسخ بدلا
or
منها
to abolish them and replace them with others.
هذا في سيرة نبينا صلى الله عليه وسلم.
This is evident in the life of our Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. If you reflect, you will find it is Abu Talib. No Muslim now nor in any time can render to Islam the service that
هل فينا حد
Abu Talib rendered. Right? Is there anyone among us who can support the Prophet or serve the Prophet or serve Islam with a service that Abu
أمر ما فيش ولذلك من
Talib rendered? It is impossible. It is simply not possible. Therefore, you understand from this the words of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, that God supports this religion through a wicked man and through those who have no morals. This is one of the blessings that God bestows upon Muslims. I have mentioned this to you many times. For example, Sheikh Omar Abdul Rahman, the well-known as American lawyer who was not a Muslim. Some Hamas leaders in America are defended by Some Jews, some secular Jews residing in America who are lawyers. Even in Egypt, even in some countries, you find communists and liberals defending jihadists who were imprisoned and tortured. So, God Almighty may grant victory to this religion through a wicked man. The solution is that the wise and prudent Muslim should not lose his connection and relationship with these people, despite their wickedness and their lack of morals. The Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, did not lose his connection with his people, Barnu Hashem. Here's the example of Abu Talib, my friends, the greatest example of the justice of Islam. If Islam were to make exceptions for anyone regarding entry into paradise or hell, Abu Talib would be the most deserving of such favoritism, right? If Islam were to make exceptions for anyone, then of course in our time now we want to admit everyone we like into paradise, and battles erupt when a non-Muslim dies, or a scholar dies, or a human rights activist dies. Even when Mother Teresa died, some people wanted her to go to paradise because of her humanitarian work, even though she was actually doing these things for Christian purposes. And there are headlines in newspapers saying, extremists say Mahdi Yaqub won't go to paradise. Well, naturally, my brothers, we won't go to paradise either. And of course, the last battle, as I remember, was the battle over Shireen Abu Akleh, the Christian Al Jazeera correspondent. We have to make her a martyr and we have to make her go to paradise. Does this religion not have followers? If Islam were to make exceptions for any non-Muslim regarding entry into paradise or hell, then the most deserving of praise is Abu Talib. No one, not even among the early Muslims, served Islam as much as Abu Talib. May God be pleased with him. Abu Talib served our Prophet. Peace and blessings be upon him. So, let's pray for the Prophet. Look at the verse that God Almighty revealed. Indeed, you do not guide whom you love, but God guides whom He wills, and He is most knowing of those who are guided. This verse, my friends, is truly awe-inspiring. Look, if reason alone guided one to Islam, then Abu Talib was among the most rational of people, if good character and noble morals alone guided one to Islam, then Abu Talib would have been the most deserving of entering Islam. He was a man at the pinnacle of noble character, and if proximity to righteous people was what guided one to Islam, then Abu Talib would have been the most deserving of entering Islam because our Prophet's life with Abu Talib lasted 42 years. The Prophet was under Abu Talib's care from the age of 8. Now, the Prophet is in the 10th year of his mission, which is the 50-year mark for 42 years. Abu Talib was a close companion of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. If entering Islam were the means to bring guidance, if the righteous were the ones who adhered to it, Abu Talib would have been the first. But guidance is something else entirely. That is why God Almighty said, indeed, you do not guide whom you love, but God guides whom He wills, and He is most knowing of those who are guided. The heart, my friends, contains another world, the heart and the soul, and all the thoughts, whispers, and inner feelings within it. There is another world that revolves within the soul. Two actions may appear similar, as our scholars say. Two actions may be similar, yet one person may be in the highest paradise, and the other in the lowest level of hell, even though they performed similar actions. God Almighty
ليسأل
resurrection
الصادقين
and hold
عن
people accountable. He
صدقهم.
will even question the truthful about their truthfulness.
يعني
Not
يسأل
everyone who is
الصادقين
truthful is truly
صدقهم
truthful seeking God's
لكن
favor.
وجه
They
الله قد يكون يبغي بهذا الصدق
may be
الإصلاح
using
بين
their
مسلمين،
truthfulness to
يبغي
sow
بهذا الصدق
discord between
الإساءة
Muslims
لامرأة
to
زوجها،
corrupt
يبغي
a
بهذا الصدق
husband
مصيبة
and
وحادثة، أو
wife
يبغي
to
بهذا
cause a
قضية.
calamity or disaster
شوف،
or
وهو
to pursue
صدق،
personal gain.
يعني الفعل فعل صدق، ولكن
Look,
الغرض
the
والنية
action
فاسدة.
itself is truthful, but the intention and
ولذلك
purpose are
يعني الله تبارك وتعالى في هذه
corrupt.
الكلمة
Therefore,
وهو
God
أعلم
Almighty, in
بالمهتدين
this statement,
يقولك
and He knows
ويبشرهم
best those who are
بما
guided, is informing you
هذا
and pointing
الآخر داخل القلوب وداخل النفوس،
to another
هذا
world within
الآخر
hearts and souls, inclinations,
والهوسة
desires,
والأفكار،
passions, and thoughts.
هذا
All of
كله
this
هو
is what
الذي
qualifies a
يوصل
person
المرء
to be guided by
إلى أن يهديه الله تبارك وتعالى. تعرفون الحديث في
God
مسلم
Almighty.
إن
You
الله
know
لا
the
ينظر
hadith in
إلى صوركم وأجسامكم
Muslim that
ولكن
God does not
ينظر
look at your
إلى
appearances and
أعمالكم،
bodies, and in another
ولكن ينظر
narration,
إلى
He does not look at your appearances and deeds, but He looks at
القلب
your
موضع نظر الرب كما يقول ابن القيم.
hearts. The
القلب
heart is the place where the
موضع
Lord
نظر
looks,
الرب.
as Ibn al-Qayyim says. The heart is the place where the Lord looks. Therefore, in reality and
ونحن ذكرنا حديث سيدنا عبادة، حديث
we
سيدنا
mentioned
أبي
the hadith of our master Ubadr, the hadith of our master al-Mikdad, may God be pleased with him, when a man said to him, "Blessed are these eyes that saw the messenger of God, peace and blessings be upon him." He was surprised and we were amazed. He said nothing but good. What was it that made our master al-Mikdad angry? He said, "O my nephew, would any of you wish to witness a situation that God has kept hidden from him? The Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, was sent to a people who did not see any religion better than the worship of idols after a period of time without messengers. And if a man does not see his father, his brother, and his loved one remaining in disbelief, then God has opened his heart and unlocked its secrets. His heart yearns for Islam, then his brother or loved one dies, and he knows he is in hell. The messenger of God saw people who disbelieved in him. Guidance is something a person should constantly ask God for, because it is a dynamic matter in the realm of hearts and souls, and physical means do not bring it about. Therefore, as we saw, Abu Talib was a man who fulfilled all the requirements for guidance, even if guidance were based on material means, yet he died an unbeliever. So, what was the secret that made Abu Talib choose to die an unbeliever? Was it veneration of fathers and grandfathers? Rather, it was a religion of Abul Muttalib. And look at Abu Jahl's incitement. Do you turn away from the religion of Abul Muttalib? Look at Abu Jahl. He is a character who, as much as he evokes hatred, also evokes admiration. In his attempt to reach his goal, what is he like? Folks, if we want to get a closer look, of course, I mentioned to you that Abdul Muttalib imposed his authority in Mecca, to the point that his word was law among the Quraysh. And we mentioned that even Utbah ibn Abi Rabi'ah, when he went to argue with the Prophet, embarrassed the Prophet by asking, "Are you better or Abul Muttalib?" Look at the embarrassment that Abul Muttalib finds himself in regarding this matter. It's like, for example, if, let's say, Khomeini's son comes and joins the Sunnis. Khomeini, who is the founder of the state and the sheikh of the sect, and then his son, Abu Talib ibn Abul Muttalib, comes and joins the Sunnis. What earthquake would happen in Mecca if a huge Imagine, for example, that a Turk had a son. He didn't have any, of course, but if we imagine that he did have a son, and this son revived the Islamic Caliphate, what would happen? A
لو ذكرنا إنه يعني
huge earthquake. Or, for example, if we mention that, for example, Abdulaziz al-Saud, who is the founder of the Saudi state, chose secularism or brought Sharif Hussein back to rule Mecca, a huge earthquake. Muslims' standards in life are what God said and what the Messenger of God said. These are the Muslims' standards in life. You know, if any other standard were to enter into these standards, things wouldn't be right. That other standard would have to gradually erode Islam. For example, that's why Islam must prevail and nothing should prevail over it. It must prevail and nothing should be over it. It must be the ultimate authority, the one to which we refer. He is to him, but he does not judge him by others. Therefore, for example, of course, we have left aside imaginary matters such as the affairs of Khomeini, Abul Aziz, and others. But now in our reality, you find those who exalt the nation above their exaltation of religion. When a conflict arises between the interest of the nation and the interest of religion, one must incline towards the nation.
الذي يعتنق الإسلام دينا يرى أن من واجب المسلمين في مصر نصرة غزة، لكن الذي يعتنق الوطن دينا يرى أنه مصر يجب أن تحافظ على أمنها القومي.
For example, we have Gaza. Yes, in Gaza, people are being slaughtered. The one who embraces Islam as a religion sees it as the duty of Muslims in Egypt to support Gaza. But the one who embraces the nation as a religion sees that Egypt must maintain its national security. Yes, for example, we have brothers from Sudan who migrated to Egypt after the war in their country. A Muslim cannot see the Sudanese migrant to Egypt as a burden, a harm, or a danger. But the person who wants to be the one who prioritizes the nation will see these Sudanese as a burden and a drain on the national economy. They are filling the streets, causing problems, raising rents, reducing job opportunities, and so on, where the interest of the state might conflict with the interest of religion, and so on. This is a significant issue. The dangerous problem with Abu Talib was that his veneration of his forefathers was his primary criterion. It was his religion. His faith. Therefore, all the means of guidance came to him, yet his heart turned away from them. For this very reason, look, he endured hunger, pain, fear, and hostility in the name of supporting the Prophet. He entered the valley and bore heavy burdens, but not in support of the truth, rather in support of his ancestor, Abd al-Muttalib. Each of us must examine ourselves for the remnants of pre-Islamic ignorance that have seeped into us and control our feelings. We must test whether we are truly a person who is responsive, obedient, and attentive to what God and His Messenger have said, or whether other sources have influenced our choices and thinking. This is a crucial, realistic test. In any case, you also see in the matter of Abd al-Muttalib's faith his statement to the Prophet, peace be upon him by God, were it not for the fear that the Quraysh would say that he only said it out of fear, I would have gladdened your heart. Reputation. Reputation and honor remain. I don't mean to repeat what we mentioned before. We now live in a world dominated by the politics of liars and opportunists. We live in an age of media where journalists don't hesitate to lie once, twice, or even 3 times, to the point that lying has become easy for people. No, my friends, think Arabs nor among honorable people. Lying was a disgrace, a disgrace, a disgrace, something to be
وفي
avoided.
حديث أبي سفيان مع هرقل
In the conversation between Abu Sufyan and
صدق أبي سفيان
Heraclius,
جعل
when
قومه
Heraclius
وراءه
wanted to test Abu
وقال لهم إني سائل هذا
Sufyan's honesty, he placed his people behind him and told them, I will ask this man a question, and if he lies, point out Abu Sufyan. Abu Sufyan said, I knew that if I lied, no one would point out anything,
صحيح محدش
but I
يعرف
feared
حقيقة
that a lie would be attributed to me. True, no one would expose him to the king, but his reputation as a leader and commander was tarnished because lying is something the Arabs don't know, something honorable people don't know. And this, my friends, is one of the characteristics and reasons that qualified the Arabs to bear this message. They do not tolerate lying, nor do they tolerate liars. A man among them would say
يعود عنها لا ينكص عنها.
something and never go back on it. He would be truthful in his words.
فهنا
So
ترى
here you see
ولذلك أتصور
that, and therefore I imagine, and
ولكن هذا ما أفهمه إنه
God
لولا
knows
حضور
best,
أبو
but
جهل
this is
وعبد
what
الله
I
بن
understand,
أبي
that if
أمية
it weren't for the presence
لكان
of Abu
ربما
Jahl and Abdullah ibn Abi Umayr ibn al-Mugharir, he might have converted to Islam. But the presence of these two people, who will be reported to have
وجزعا منعه من أن
said it out of fear,
وهذا
prevented him from doing so.
إن الواحد لما
This,
يكون
my friends, teaches us that
اختيار أو أمام قرار
when one is faced with a choice or a
خلصائه والمقربون
decision, one should only take with them their closest and dearest friends. Of course, the most difficult times are the times of death, the moment of
بمجلسك وأنت
death. If you are surrounded by
من يلقنك الشهادة من
righteous people as you die, you will find those who prompt you to recite the Shahada, those who remind you of God, those who encourage you towards the hereafter, and those who hasten to extract from you forgiveness for so-and-so, or pardon for so-and-so, or something like that. But if the people of this world are present, they will only increase your regret for what you have done in it. So it is important that a person always takes with them, especially in difficult situations, the people of goodness, virtue, and righteousness. Otherwise the outcome may be like this. And yet, as we said, there are
وأبو طالب
degrees of disbelief, and Abu
أكثر من حديث صحيح
Talib mentioned more than one
يعني أشهرها حديث العباس رضي الله
authentic
عنه في
hadith,
الصحيحين
some of the most famous being the hadith of Al-Abars, may God be pleased with him. It is narrated in the two sayas that Al-Abars said to the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, O Messenger of Allah, did you benefit your uncle Abu Talib in any way, for he used to protect you and become angry for your sake, and in another narration, and support you. The Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said, yes, he is in the shallowest part of hellfire. Were it not for me, he would be in the lowest level. The shallowest part, my friends, is water that reaches the ankles, water on the ground that reaches the ankles. So the Prophet said, he is in the shallowest part of hellfire. In another narration, also in Sahih al-Bukhari, he said, perhaps my intercession will reach him on the day of resurrection, so he will be in the shallowest part of hellfire, from which his brain will boil. Were it not for that, he would be in the lowest level of hellfire, because, as we said, he fulfilled the means of guidance and turned away completely. And in another hadith, also in Sahih al-Bukhari, the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said, I found him in the depths of hellfire, so I took him by the hand to the shallowest part of hellfire. But this shallowest part of
تكون موجودا في نار جهنم
hellfire, imagine being in hellfire up
تغلي منها
to the ankles. The Prophet mentioned that his brain would boil from it. In another narration, it says, from which his brain would boil. But the most severe punishment is the continuation of the most severe punishment. The most severe form of torment is the continuation of
مثلما هو الأحلى من النعيم استمرار النعيم
torment, just as the sweetest form of bliss is the continuation of
ولذلك كان
bliss.
يحتمل
Is this
ظهور
true?
الفتنة
This is eternity.
كما في
Therefore,
الحديث يؤتى بالموت يوم
As in the
القيامة
hadith,
على
death will be
هيئة
brought forth on the
كبش
day of
أقرن
resurrection in the form of a ram, a white ram,
يؤتى
and
به
it will be brought forth and
فيذبح بين الجنة
slaughtered
والنار
between
ثم ينادى يا أهل الجنة خلود أبدا
paradise and hell.
ويا
Then
أهل
it will
النار
be proclaimed, O people of paradise,
في سورة
eternity,
النساء
no death. O people of hell,
قول
eternity,
المؤمنين
no
والمؤمنين
death. And you
أفنطمعون
will
في
hear in
الجنة
Surah as
إلا من
Safat
أكرم
the
الله
words of the
ونعمه
believers while they are in paradise. Are we not to
فرحتهم
die, except our
باستمرارهم
same
في
death, and are
نعيمهم
we not to be punished?
وراحتهم فيه
Meaning, their joy in the continuation of bliss was greater than their joy in bliss itself. As for the people of hell, the people of
أهل
hell
النار أصحاب الجنة أن
will call
أفيض
out
علينا من
to the
الماء
people of
فنشرب
paradise,
ونغتسل
pour upon
ونستظل
us some
بظلها
water or from that
ونلبس ما
which
أراد
Allah has
لكم.
provided you.
وفي
They
سورة
will
الغافر
say,
إن
indeed,
الذين
Allah has
كفروا
forbidden them
وصدوا
to the
عن سواء الجنة
disbelievers.
يخفف
And in
عنا
Surah Ghafir, those in hell will say
ذنوبهم
to the keepers of hell,
العذاب.
invoke your
وفي
Lord to
سورة
lighten for
الزخرف
us a
إن
day of
المجرمين
the
في عذاب
punishment.
جهنم
In
خالدين
Surah
فيها
Az-Zakhraf, indeed, the
فتقطع
criminals will
أعينهم
be in the punishment of hell eternally. It will not be lightened for them, meaning it will not be lightened, and
ليقضي
they
علينا
will be in
ربك
despair, and they will call out, O Malik, put an end to us. Your Lord said that you will remain, meaning that none of you should underestimate this punishment, for it is more
بقاء العذاب
severe than mere torment. The torment is continuous, the torment is lasting, the torment is eternal. Therefore, among the beautiful sayings of our righteous predecessors was, if the
خزفا يبقى
hereafter were clay that would remain, and this world were gold that would perish, the wise would
اختار
only
العاقل
choose
إلا ما يبقى
what is lasting.
صح ولا لا ما اختار العاقل إلا الخزف الذي
Right?
يبقى
No, the wise would only
فكيف
choose the
يكون
clay
الدنيا
that
والآخرة
remains.
ذهبا
So how can it be otherwise when this world is clay that perishes and the hereafter is gold that remains? And among the beautiful sayings of Imam Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, may God have mercy on him, was, he who clings to this world is like one grasping at snow. What happens when one grasps at snow? The snow slips away, meaning days pass. Anyway,
طيب
regarding the
على كل حال بقي أن يعني في مسألة أبي طالب أن
matter
نشير
of
إلى
Abu Talib,
رواية
we should
ضعيفة
point to a narration,
لكن
a
هذه الرواية الضعيفة أحب أن
weak
نتعمد
narration,
فيها
but
أقوال
one that some
المفسرين
people
والعلماء
who
صلى الله عليه
love the
وسلم
Prophet, peace and
وإنهم
blessings be
يفسرون
upon
أن
him,
أبا طالب بعد
and
كل
who
هذه
do not
المدة التي
believe
في
that
الإسلام
Abu Talib,
مصيره إلى
after
النار
all the service he rendered to
رواية
Islam,
مفسرها
is
مسلم
destined for hell, like to cling
وسندها
to. It is a
برجل
narration reported by
مشهور
Ibn Ishaq in his
يقول
biography, and its
إن
chain
أبا
of transmission
طالب
includes an
عند
obscure
أبي
or
طالب
unknown man. It says that
فقال
Al-Abrs was
فالتحمه
standing at
الوارثون
Abu
فإذا
Talib,
أبا طالب يتمتم
said, and then he turned around
فقال
and
يا
saw
بني
Abu Talib
محمد
murmuring
فقال يا بني
something. He
والله
said,
لقد
O my
قال
nephew
الله
Muhammad.
الذي
He
أمرني
replied,
أن
O
أقوله
my nephew, by God, he
تمام
has said the
هذه
word
رواية
that I
ضعيفة
commanded him to say.
ويعني الأحاديث
This is a
الصحيحة على
weak
خلافها
narration, and the
فعلى كل حال أنا بس أحب
authentic hadiths
أذكر
contradict it. In any case, I just wanted to point this out because sometimes when a person is engrossed in loving the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, he loves those who defended him, and then he begins to feel embarrassed that
مما
this
يدل
is a
على
weak narration.
خطورة
Of course, what should also be pointed out here is the seriousness of words in Islam. The Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, used to say to him, O my uncle, say a word that I can use to argue for you before God. And Abu Talib did not say this word. Islam is such that a person enters it with a word and turns away from it and leaves it with a word. And the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said, many a word is uttered without a person giving it any thought, and it will plunge him into hell for 70 years. This means the seriousness of words, and this seriousness of words tells us that the group of disbelievers of Quraysh had two characteristics that are not found in our time, at least, meaning they are not found in many eras. These two characteristics, it is understanding and sincerity. They understood the phrase, there is no God, but God correctly But in our time, you find a large group of people who say there is no God but God without fully understanding its meaning, or they know it but find it easy to say it means. Either they don't understand it, or they understand it and are lying to others and to themselves. And here, in Egypt, we have a esteemed philosopher-physician who swears by God more than anyone else. So what also means is that I can only say what's remarkable about these people is that when they were told to say there is no God but God, they were just being polite. It's like you're asking for a favor and that's it. We in our time are like, bite my heart, but don't bite my bread, and insults are unnecessary. Everything related to speech is easy. The difficult thing is when it involves harming interests or money. They didn't say this because they understand it, they understand it's a system, and because they don't allow themselves to lie, to say it and act contrary to it. Meanwhile, you find now 99% of secularists saying there is no God but God. 99% of those who don't want Islam to rule, and who kill Muslims and persecute those who call to Islam. 99% of them say there is no God but God. So, they are either not understanding it or they are lying when they say it. In any case, the issue of the word is not a trivial matter for a Muslim. We reiterate that when truth existed and the value of the word was so high among these Arabs, they were the most suitable recipients of the message. I myself acknowledge this. In the past, I believed that the Arabs possessed eloquence and rhetorical skill. You always hear that the Arabs have nothing but words, nothing but condemnation and denunciation. As I grew older, I truly abandoned this notion. The noblest thing in a person is the word, and the most enduring thing in human history is the word, a word spoken thousands of years ago. Still influences people today. A wise word, a kind word, or a harsh word, even if spoken thousands of years ago, still affects people today. Meanwhile, any building, any material achievement, any structure, any civilization, its benefit has vanished. What remains for the Egyptians of the Great Pyramid and the colossal temples? Nothing remains. Only words remain that influence people to this day. Therefore, why are philosophers, sages, and great figures immortalized? They are immortalized. Immortalized by what? By their words, whether true or false. That is another matter, but the word is the noblest thing in a person, and it is what immortalizes them most. When Islam descends upon a people, the word is their first honor. They do not utter the word unless they understand it, unless they embrace it, believe in it, and have faith in it. They are the most suitable people for the revelation of the message. Otherwise, if the message were revealed to a people who do not understand there is no God but God, and even if they intended to understand it, they would not grasp it, then what is the meaning of faith? Now, here is the last thing I would like to mention regarding the death of Abu Talib. Abu Talib's love for the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, as expressed in his statement, were it not for the fear that the Quraysh would say that he was only carrying a camel, I would have gladdened your eyes with it. This is true love for the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. My dear friends, many of us are not like that. Many of us are not at this level, and each one of us can examine ourselves regarding the matter of preserving the Sunnah, the matter of preserving noble morals, what the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, loved. So, loving the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, means taking a stance that
بعد فتح مكة. أبو بكر هو الصحابي
With him,
الوحيد الذي
after the
أسلم
conquest of Mecca, Abu Bakr
بهذا
is the
الكرامة
only
العظيمة.
companion whose entire family embraced Islam. This is a blessing from God upon him. His
أسلم
father,
أبو أبيه
mother, wives, and children
وجده
all
جابر
converted.
أسلم بعد
Abu
فتح
Bakr's
مكة
father,
وكان
who was
أبو
the
بكر
son of Abu Quhafa, embraced Islam
ووصي
after the
به
conquest of
ووصى
Mecca.
به
He was quite
بمكة
old,
بسبب
and
النبي
Abu
صلى الله
Bakr
عليه
brought
وسلم
him to the
فقبل ذلك
Prophet,
أن
peace and
رأسه
blessings be
ورأسه
upon him.
كالجنة.
The narration says that his head was
فقبل
covered with white cotton, so white that the Prophet,
حتى
peace
قال
and
النبي صلى الله عليه
blessings
وسلم
be upon him,
لو
said, "If you
آذنتم
had given
يأتي الشيخ، يعني النبي هو
us
الذي يقول
permission,
قال يا
we
رسول
would
الله
have come
من
to the
أحق
old
الناس
man."
بي.
The Prophet, peace and
كان
blessings be
جابر
upon him,
ابن أبي
said, "O
قحافة
Messenger
ابن
of
أبي
God,
قحافة
you are
ابن
more
أسد
deserving of being visited by him." When Abu Quhafa pledged allegiance to the
قيل ما بك
Prophet,
يا أبا
peace and
الربيع؟
blessings be
فقال
upon
أبو
him,
بكر
Abu Bakr wept.
يا
"Why
رسول
are you
الله
weeping, Abu Bakr?" He
قلت
asked.
لو
Abu
كانت يد عمك أبي طالب.
Bakr replied, "O Messenger of God, I wish that your uncle
لأن
Abu Talib's hand had been
سعده
with you,
الله
and that
بإسلامه.
God would gladden you with his Islam, rather than my father's." This is a very
وهذا
high level
مستوى
of
عالي
love,
من الحب
my
يا جماعة، والله مستوى عالي من الحب.
friends. It is truly a very high level of
إذا
love.
تخيلت
I
أن
mean,
أبي
if I imagined
يكون
that my
مسلما
father had not
أن
been a
يحفظه
Muslim,
وأن
I
يثبته،
ask God to protect my
وتخيل أن
father and
أنه
keep him
مسلم،
steadfast. But
وتخيل
if I
أنه قام
imagined that
بسبيل
he
الله
wasn't a Muslim and
وبايعه النبي،
imagined that he came
هل
to the
كان في
Prophet to
قلبي
pledge allegiance to
يقول
him, and the
إسلام أبي
Prophet
طالب
accepted his
خير من
pledge, would
إسلام
I
أبي؟
have thought to myself that
هذا
Abu
محنة
Talib's
والله،
Islam was better
محنة
than my
لأن يكون
father's?
الله
It's a
ورسوله
trial, a
أحب إليكم
truly
مما
severe
سواهما.
trial, to have God and his
أن
messenger
تكون
more beloved to
تكون
you than
محبة
anything
رسول
else,
الله
and to have the
أحب
Prophet's
إليك من
pleasure
محبة نفسك.
more beloved to you than your own.
أبو بكر بلغ في الحب هذا المبلغ
Look at Abu Bakr, the
لما رأى أباه يدخل الإسلام
extent of his love when he
فكر
saw
أن
his father
النبي كان
embrace
يحب أن يدخل في الإسلام
Islam.
بنفسه.
Remember that the Prophet wanted Abu Talib
ومن
to
هنا أيضا
embrace
موقف سيدنا عمر رضي الله
Islam.
عنه.
Something similar
سيدنا عمر حصل بينه وبين سيدنا
happened
العباس
between Umar,
مبلغ
may
من
God be
المال
pleased with him, and Abers. There was a matter
العباس
between
حريص
Umar and
على
Abers
إنفاق
that I won't elaborate on now, but Abers was eager
الفرصة
for Abu Sufyan
أبو
to
سفيان
embrace Islam.
الإسلام
Abu Sufyan's
لكي
death was
يقاومه
an
ويدخل في
opportunity.
الإسلام،
If he were killed, the
فكان
resistance
حريصا
in
على
Mecca would
إخراجه من
end
دائم
and
الكفر.
they would enter Islam.
الحمد
So,
لله الذي
Umar
مكن
was
من
eager
الجميع
to
عنه
kill
ولا
the leader
حصل.
of disbelief. Praise be to
فرغب
God who has
العباس
given us power
وحرص
over
أن
you
ينصر
without any
أبا
covenant or
سفيان،
agreement. You have fallen
وحرص
into our
العباس
hands.
التي كان
Abers
يحبها
was eager
جنة
for
المال
Abu Sufyan to embrace Islam,
وجرى
while
بأن
Abu
سيدنا
Sufyan
عمر
hastened to take the money he had been
فقال
waiting
العباس
for.
يا
He
عمر
rode to the
تعلم
Prophet,
يا عمر
peace and blessings be upon
فوالله
him,
لو
and
كان
a
من بين الناس
conversation took place between him and
لما
Umar.
فعلت
Al-Abers said, "O Umar, hold on. O
وأبو
Umar, by
سفيان
God,
يرغب في
if you
النسب
were
إلى
from the
النبي
Barnu
من
Adi,
هو؟
I would not have done what I
لأن أبو
did."
سفيان من بني
Of
عبد
course,
مناف،
Abu Sufyan was closer in lineage to the
بني عبد
Prophet than
مناف،
Umar, because Abu Sufyan was
والنبي
from the
محمد بن
Barnu
هاشم
Ab,
بن عبد المطلب
Manaf.
بن
He
هاشم.
was Abu Sufyan Sakhar ibn Harb ibn
شوية
Umayr ibn Abd Shams ibn
ومر
Abd
بني
Manaf,
عدي
while the Prophet Muhammad was the son of Abdullah ibn Abd al-Muttalib ibn Hashim ibn Abd Manaf, but Umar was a little further along. Umar was from the Barnu Adi. Umar ibn al-Khartab ibn Nufail ibn Abd al-Azhar ibn Rir ibn Abdullah ibn Horit ibn Razar ibn Adi ibn Kab, that is, after Abd Manaf. By what lineage? Look, after Abd Manaf, the son of Qusay ibn Kilab ibn Murr ibn Kab. So, Umar was a little further along. Al-Abers said to him, if he were from the Barnu Adi, hold on, O Abers, by God, the day you embraced Islam was dearer to me than the day Al-Khartab embraced Islam. If Al-Khartab had embraced Islam, who was his father? This is only because I knew that the Prophet's joy at it. Your Islam was greater than his joy at the day Al-Khartab's father embraced Islam. This indicates high levels of love. High stations in love, of course. The impact of Abu Talib's death was significant. The political impact on the Islamic call remained. Abu Talib's death had a great and severe effect on the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. No one from Banu Hashim deviated from Abu Talib's path, except Abu Lahab, the only one who broke with the consensus of Banu Hashim. But Banu Hashim stood with the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, at every stage, even during the 3-year siege and famine. Even the disbelievers from Banu Hashim joined him in the valley. But when Abu Talib died, leadership passed to Sayyid Sunnah al-Abbas, may God be pleased with him. At that time, Sayyid al-Abbas had not yet embraced Islam. He converted after the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. Of course, al-Abbas did not possess the same personality as Abu Talib, who was the number one among his people, Banu Hashim. Likewise, he did not have the same standing as Abu Talib among the Quraysh. Therefore, Abu Talib's disappearance weakened the support of Banu Hashim for the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. Therefore, we will see what we have already discussed, that the disbelievers dared to attack the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, after Abu Talib's death in ways they had not dared during his lifetime. Let us now turn to that. God willing, we will explain this in detail later. Secondly, when the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, returned from Taif, he sought the protection of Mutim ibn Adi. What does it mean that he sought the protection of Mutim ibn Adi? It means that the strength of Banu Hashim was beginning to weaken. While it's true that Banu Hashim would not have surrendered the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, nor would they have abandoned him, the strength, power, and mobilization of Abu Talib were lacking after his death. Therefore, the Prophet was forced to seek the protection of Mutim ibn Adi. We mentioned in the previous session that Mutim ibn Adi was not from Banu Hashim. We mentioned that he was Mutim ibn Adi ibn Norfal ibn Abd Manaf, and we discussed what transpired between him and Abu Talib in the previous session. So, the political impact of Abu Talib's death was severe on the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. 3 or 35 days after Abu Talib's death, Khadijah, may God be pleased with her, also passed away. Of course, Khadijah, may God be pleased with her, is a very, very, very important figure. You know that the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, used to seek refuge with Khadijah, as the narration states, and she would comfort him regarding the people's affairs. Now, we are discussing years of calling to Islam, mean years of contemplation, worry, harm, struggle, and striving. No matter what a person does throughout the day, in the end, they return to their home. It is said that the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, used to return to his home, and this eased his worries about people. Therefore, the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, was deeply affected by the death of Khadijah. May God be pleased with her, and her memory remained present in his heart until his death, peace and blessings be upon him, to the point that Aisha, the beloved of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, used to say, I was never as jealous of any woman as I was of Khadijah. I would even say he would divide the sheep into pieces and send some to Khadijah's friends. I would say it's as if there was no one else in the world but Khadijah. May God release our brother Ayman Abul Rahim. He had insights on the issue of the Muslim home. Among his sayings was, look, everyone, look at how Aisha dressed the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. He mentioned an incident when she and the Prophet had a disagreement, and the Prophet said to her, let us judge. Then Abu Bakr came to judge between them. He said, the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said, who will speak? Will you speak, or shall I? She said, speak, but only speak the truth. Of course, Abu Bakr heard this and thought up to strike her. Our Ayman Abdul Rahim, may God release him from captivity,
كان
offered
بيقول
a witty comment.
السيدة
Who
خديجة
is
بتقول
Aisha
ايه؟
speaking to?
زوجها، زوجها رقم واحد. فهي بتقول له
Her
ايه
husband,
ابراهيم
her number
يعني
one
حاجه زي
husband.
كده يعني
So look
بتمدحه.
what she's telling him.
فأبو بكر
Speak,
رضي
and
الله عنه
what does
يقول
it
لمن؟
mean not to
رسول
say
الله
this or
صلى
that?
الله عليه
But
وسلم.
Abu Bakr, may God be
سيدنا أبو
pleased with
بكر
him,
صاحب
is
العبد
speaking to him on behalf of
ويقول
the
في التاريخ
messenger
يقول
of
ايه؟
God, peace and blessings
فكان
be upon
النبي
him.
صلى الله عليه
So
وسلم
Asher, in a moment of
إذا
clarity,
كان
said to
بمكان
him,
مكان
if there were no one
وكان
else in the
الذي
world
يحضر
but Khadijah, the
في
Prophet,
حضور
peace
النبي
and blessings be
أنفس
upon
الأعمال
him,
لا
would
برضه
say
حصل
she
معاه
was this and that, and God
يقول له
blessed me
ايه؟
with children through her. So
تذكر
time
القصة
passed, and
وتذكر
Aisha remained silent.
ما
Then
تذكر
another
القصة وما
incident
حصل
occurred, and
قالت ماذا
she
أبدلك
said
الله
to
خيرا
him, remember
ما
Khadijah,
عادش
remember
ينفع خالص.
Khadijah. She was nothing but an
أبدل
old
خيرا
woman with
أقصد
red teeth.
يعني
God
أقصد
has
نسبة
given you
السن
someone better than her. You
الحضارة
have
خير
9
الناس
children. Now,
الصحة
red teeth
والأسنان.
means she was
ما
old.
المرأة
Red
تغطي
teeth
نصف
means
الرأس.
my
طبعا هي السيدة
friend's
خديجة
teeth falling out.
تعتبر سيدة
Red
عائشة.
teeth means a teeth
السيدة خديجة
falling
بنت
out.
السيدة
Of
عائشة
course,
عندها
refers to
4
Lady
سنين.
Cardiger. Lady Aisha didn't see Lady
وتذكر رضي
Cardiger.
الله
Lady
عنها
Cardiger died when Lady
فقالت
Aisha was 4
رأت
years
في
old.
هذه
She
اللحظة
remembers
جلال
saying,
الله
I didn't see her.
ما
When the
نتيجة
prophet saw this tone, he said, by God,
ما
God
نتيجة
has not
ذكر
given me
الناس
anyone better than
وتعلق
her.
به
She
حين نصرت
believed in me
الناس
when people disbelieved
وصدقتني
in me.
حين
She
كذبت
believed in
الناس
me when people rejected me. She
ورزقتني
affirmed my
من
truth
الأولاد
when
حين حرمني
people
من
denied
النساء.
me, and God blessed me with children through
كانت
her
السيدة
when he
عائشة عندما
deprived me
تسمع
of
مثل هذا
children
الكلام
through other
تنسب
women.
نفسها
Lady
للنبي
Asher,
صلى
meaning
الله
she
عليه وسلم
heard
الحديث
such
القدسي
talk,
احفظنا من
tried to
الامرأة
restrain
السيدة
herself
خديجة
from speaking ill of Lady
زوج
Cardiger.
النبي صلى
But the
الله عليه
point
وسلم
here is that the memory of Lady Cardiger
وأشد
remained in the
كرامة
Prophet's
عند النبي
heart,
حتى
peace
أنها
and
ذكرت
blessings be upon him, and even more so in his
في
heart,
إن مد
even
الله
with
في أعمارنا
men,
هذه
in a
لحتى
situation that, God
في
willing,
أحد الغزوات يا
we will
جماعة
tell you about if we
أسر
live long enough. In
أسر
one of the battles,
العاص بن الربيع
one of the
أسر أسر
detachments
النبي
captured Al-Ars ibn al-Rabi.
وزوجه
Al-Ars
زوج
ibn
النبي صلى الله
al-Rabi,
عليه
who
وسلم
was
زينب.
the husband of the Prophet's daughter,
تمام.
Zainab, peace and
زوجة
blessings
زينب
be upon
أسر
him. He was captured at
أسر السرية هذه
Badr.
أسر
He was
أسر
captured in the detachment.
أسر في بدر.
This one was captured. He was captured at
على المشركين
Badr.
السيدة
Okay.
زينب
And the Prophet
زوجته.
decided the
طبعا
ransom
المسلمين
for the
عندهم
polytheists was a matter of great concern for Lady Zainab, his wife. He, of course, prevented his wife from joining her father. This didn't mean she had converted to Islam, but he didn't allow her to emigrate, so she remained in Mecca. It was a very difficult situation, knowing her husband would fight her father, leaving her either a widow or an orphan. But the important thing is that the Battle of Badr ended with the best possible outcome. Her father was victorious, and her husband was taken prisoner. She found no other ransom than to send all the money she had along with her necklace. This necklace had been a wedding gift from Khadijah. When this money arrived as ransom for Al-As ibn al-Rabi, it is said that the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, saw Khadijah's necklace and was deeply moved. He said, "This is Khadijah's necklace."
اشتد الأمر على النبي صلى الله عليه
Matter
وسلم
was very difficult for the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. So he asked her permission. He said, if you see fit to release her prisoner and return her property to her, then do so. The companions, may God be pleased with them, agreed. The point here is that when he saw Khadijah's necklace, he was deeply moved. May God be pleased with
الآن نحن
Khadijah.
نتأمل
Now,
في حياة النبي مع
if we
خديجة.
reflect on the
خلينا نتخيل مع
Prophet's
بعض
life with
واحدة تزوجت رجلا
Khadijah, let's imagine
وأريد أن
together a
نتصور
woman who married a man,
وتصور
and
معها
this
ما كان فيه قومه من أمر الجاهلية.
man turned away from the ways of his
استعمار
people in the
وأمر
pre-Islamic era.
مجالس
He neither worshipped
واحد
idols
متزوج
nor drank alcohol, nor
وحابب
did he
يتصرف.
frequent gatherings. He just kept to
وبعد شوية
himself in
هذا
his own
يتغير
unique state.
لأنه
After a
أصبح
while, he would retreat
كل
to
سنة يروح يجلس في
the
الغار
cave, and every year he
ويتوقف
would
عن
go and sit
عن
in the
المدينة. وكل سنة جلوسه في
cave,
الغار
cutting
يزيد.
himself off from the city, and every year his
فكل
time
السيدة
in the
خديجة
cave
تقول
would increase. If a woman other than Khadijah were to think, what would she
دلوقتي
think?
في ايه؟
What are we getting into now? He's married another woman. This
كل
is
سنة
one
يزيد
of the
يزيد. بس
strange
هذا
things
حصل
of this
زوجات
era.
النبي
In the
يلبسوا براحتهم. لكن دي ملامح جنون يعني.
married as they pleased, but this is the sign of madness. Then one day he comes to her and says, cover me, I almost died, and tells her what he
الحالة ايه بتزداد صعوبة، صح ولا لا؟
saw. The situation is
فصار
getting more and more difficult,
للمرأة
right?
تكون في
The
هذه
matter
المرحلة
is
الصعبة
difficult.
تطور
What
حياتها
woman,
كلها
in
وتظهر
this
في هذه
scene,
الحالة
observing her
تحب
husband's
زوجها
development, wouldn't feel that
وتنتقل
he is
لزوجها،
possessed by a jinn,
يعني
that he has gone
تتلذذ
mad,
بشهوة
that
بشرة
he has
الجمال
lost
والفراغ
his
البدني
mind, he has become insane from so much emptiness. He was in that state, surrounded by his own self-imposed isolation. Cardiger, no,
احترمت وقدرت أن زوجها
Cardiger respected and appreciated that her
ليس
husband
كهؤلاء
was
الرجال،
ain't like those
ليس كهؤلاء الناس في شأن الجاهلية.
men, not
قدرت
like those people in the
أنه
pre-Islamic
يستطيع أن
era.
يتركها
She
في
understood that
بيتها، أن
when he
يتركها
wanted to be
ويتحكم
alone,
فيها.
she should let him be
ولما
to
جاءها
worship
بهذه
and talk
الحالة
in the
التي يتشكك فيها
cave.
كل
When
من
he
شك،
came to her in that state, which would cause anyone to doubt,
والله
she
لا
said to
تخزني
him,
الله
by
أبدا.
God, God will never
وصلت صلة
disgrace
الرحم
you. You maintain ties of
وتصل
kinship. You are
وتحمل
hospitable
الكلب
to
وتكسر
guests. You
المعدوم
bear the
وتقف
burdens of the
للضعفاء في
weak.
الظهر
You provide for the needy, and you help those afflicted by
وتنتهي
misfortune.
في هذه
God
اللحظة يا
will never
جماعة
disgrace
أعظم
you.
الأمور
These words, at
أن
that
الإنسان
moment,
لما
were
يكون
truly momentous.
في
When a
محنة وفي
person is
شدة وفي أزمة، وبالذات
in
لما تكون هذه
distress, in
الأزمة
hardship,
مفاجئة،
in crisis, especially when
نحن
that
والحاجة
crisis
نحتاج
is
إليه في هذه اللحظة
sudden, what they
أن
need most
نقدم
at
له
that
مثل هذه العبارة.
moment
ويسمون
is
هذا
someone to offer them such words. Now they call it psychological
ليفسر ما
support to
جرى
explain what
لنا
happened to them in a way that
ولتسليها
satisfies
وتسكينها.
them, not to
فأخذت
make them
زوجها
feel
حملها
worse.
وذهبت إلى ورقة بن
Then she
نوفل،
took on the burden and went to
ثم بعد
Waraqah
ذلك
ibn
تحملت معه كل ما نزل به. احنا عشنا
Nawfal.
10
After
سنوات
that,
مع بعض
she
في
endured with him
هذه
everything that befell
الأزمة،
him.
وكانت
We lived
زوجته
together for
ذات
10
صلة
years in such a
وأخلاق
difficult
وإحسان،
time, and
فأصابها
the
القول
pain and hardship, and
فقال
she, the
سبحان
noble
الله
and respected
وأصابها
one,
الجوع
entered with him in the
والعطش
valley, and fear afflicted her, fear for him, fear for
صلى الله
herself,
عليه
and
وسلم.
hunger afflicted her with a
من ابن
siege,
جميلة
even her daughters,
لما
meaning the daughters
توفي
of the
صلى الله
Prophet,
عليه
may
وسلم
God bless him and
حقيقة
grant him
التحديث
peace,
الذي
were divorced from the sons of
سيأتي
Lahab
على
when
هذه
their
الغرابات.
prophet, may God bless him and
أخذت
grant him
زوجته صفية
peace,
لو
was
عرض
sent.
على
I
امرأة
mean, the reality of the
من بين
prophet's
الناس
life, this life of the
أنها
prophet. If it were presented to
ترضى
us,
بهذا
we
يعني،
would be overwhelmed by it. But if it were
فالمسيحية
presented to
المحترمة لو
a
عرضت
woman
على
from the
حد
general public,
حاجة
there is not
مادية
one
كاملة
of them who would not accept
وهو
this.
يصف
I
النبي صلى
mean,
الله عليه
therefore,
وسلم
Lady
بنفسها
Cardiger, may God
وبمالها.
be pleased with her, is
طيب
a special case, and a complete case. She comforted the Prophet, may God bless him and grant him
نحن
peace,
ذكرنا
with
أن زوجته
herself
زوجة
and
كان
her
ناجحا،
wealth.
وأن
Well,
أول من
music,
دخل النبي
Lady
صلى الله عليه وسلم
Cardiger.
كان
Of
في
course,
هؤلاء
we mentioned
كان
that
تاجرا.
Lady Cardiger was a
يعني
merchant, and
وذكرنا
that her
أنها
first
هي
acquaintance with the Prophet,
ذهبت
may
إلى
God bless him
ذهبت
and grant him
لتتعلم
peace,
الغرض
was when he
من
worked
هذه
for her in
الرحلة.
trade. I mean, we mentioned that she was the one who went to him,
تزين
or
بها
asked
شخصية
for
صاحب
marriage,
الجمال
or
وتزين
initiated the
له
matter of
شخصيته
marriage to the Prophet. May God bless
وأعطاها
him and
شخصية
grant him
قوية.
peace. I mean,
على
we
أساس
are
النبي
now
صلى
talking
الله
about a
عليه
strong
وسلم
personality, a
زوجه
noble personality, a wealthy
حتى أن
personality.
النبي
We
لما
are not
تزوج
talking now about a
إلا
weak personality,
امرأة
but
كبرت
this
السن.
strong personality. A prophet, peace and blessings be upon him,
طبعا
was so
أحد
devoted
أبرز
to his
المشكلات التي
wife
في
that
عالمنا
he never
الحديث
married another woman
مسألة
during her
الشخصيات
lifetime.
التي
One of the
تكون
most
أثناء
prominent
الجواز.
problems in our modern
في
world is the
أشهر
clash of
وأكبر
personalities between husband and
المشاكل
wife.
في عصرنا.
This is one of the most common and
وأنا
widespread
رأيت في
problems
حياتي
of our time. I have
يعني
witnessed many
الحديث عن
situations
امرأة
where a
المرأة
woman's
فيها شخصيتها أقوى من شخصية زوجها،
personality is stronger than her husband's, but she
ولكن
always
العمل
manages
عليها
to
دائما على أن تظهر له
present
وتدبر الأمور بحيث يظهر له لنفسه
herself
ويظهر
and
للناس أنه هو الشخصية الأقوى.
others as the
وهذا من ذكاء المرأة.
dominant figure. This
الزوجة تبدأ
demonstrates a
بالانهيار
woman's
عندما
intelligence. Homes begin
تتحول
to
العلاقة
crumble
من علاقة زوج وزوجة
when the
إلى
relationship
معركة
transforms from
دائرة
one of husband
رجال.
and wife, where men are the protectors
وهذا
and
الذي يحدث
maintainers
في
of
دار
women,
الحرب.
to one of
وأنا
equals.
الآن
This
أحدثكم
is the
حديثا
beginning of the
سريعا.
collapse of homes. I am
المرأة
speaking
عندما
to you
كانت
from a
المرأة
male
قبل
perspective. The
أن تخضع
woman is, the more she gains her husband's favor, and the more she wins his heart. The more she is competitive, the more he will dislike, distance himself from, and lose interest in her, even if it doesn't lead to divorce or abandonment. He may even perceive all other women as superior to his wife while he is out and about, watching the news, not to mention television series and movies. Everyone else becomes better than his wife in his eyes as long as she starts acting as an equal and disobeys him. Now you see how this strong personality, the personality of Khadijah, may God be pleased with her, influenced the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, to such an extent that, even in the pre-Islamic era, time when polygamy was common and even forbidden acts were not considered unlawful, these people did not consider adultery forbidden. It was widespread. Look how she controlled him and his desires to the point that he never married another woman during her lifetime. This, on the other hand, refutes the common misconception about the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, regarding his many marriages, that he was a lustful man. As the Orientalists and missionaries claim, God forbid, because you see that the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, married Khadijah in the year 25 when he was 25, and she passed away when he was 15. This was during his youth, his prime, a period of intense youth. This was a period during which the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, did not marry again. He, peace and blessings be upon him, married no other than Khadijah. From this, we understand that his marriages at the age of 51, 52, and 54 were not driven by lust. Of course, the issue of lust and inclination towards women is not a flaw in men. Rather, it is natural. It is the one who does not suffer from lust who should seek to understand the problem within himself. But now we are talking about the issue of women in relation to the noble man, the bearer of the message and the one who calls to Islam. So he married Khadijah, may God be pleased with her, at the age of 51, and he did not marry another woman while she was alive. This indicates the perfection of Khadijah's character and the perfection of the Prophet's character, peace and blessings be upon him. Here is a brief point I will pause to make regarding the science of hadith. The Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said in the authentic hadith in the two Sahih, many men reach perfection, but among women, only Maryam bint Imran and Seerah bint Muzar reached perfection. There is another narration that says, and among women, only 4 reached perfection: Maryam, Seerah, Khadijah, and Fatima bint Muhammad. Now, is the second hadith a weak hadith? What about the hadith that mentions the 4? Is it a weak hadith? Muslims fabricate sayings attributed to their prophet, and they would have authenticated this hadith. Look at the narration. The narration mentions 2 women who have no relation to the Prophet, Seerah bint Muzaim and Maryam bint Imran. Ibn Kathir says perhaps the secret to his superiority and perfection is that both women cared for Prophet in his infancy. Pharaoh's wife cared for Moses, and Maryam cared for Jesus, peace be upon him. Well, the 2 women who are related to our Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, are Khadijah and Fatima. If Muslims were to authenticate based on whims and love, they would fabricate sayings attributed to their Prophet. But you find this narration to be completely authentic. Therefore, look, everyone, I read a post by one of the brothers on Facebook a few days ago. He said, it is enough honor for the science of hadith that, if this science were applied to any history of nations, all of history would be swept away. No nation could prove an event in its history by the standard of Hadith science. It is a very, very, very great filter. That is, the hadith, that is, authentic is beyond doubt. Rather, historians, the world of historians, meaning far removed from the world of the modernists, believe that the hadith scholars were too strict in their historical perspective. They were strict because if we used the hadith scholars' methodology, we would never have a sound history. Okay, anyway, since we've been discussing the topic of the wife, look at the issue of the wife in general. It's an extremely serious matter, a very, very, very serious matter. And you know the hadith of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, a hadith in Sahih Muslim, the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said, imagine this scene. Satan places his throne on the water. Satan places his throne on the water. Then he sends out his troops. We have tasked teams, and what do you mean? They are widespread. The one closest to him in rank is the one who causes the greatest discord. One of them comes and says, I did such and such, and Satan says, you haven't done anything. Then another comes and says, I didn't leave him until I separated him from his wife. He says, and in another narration, he clings to it, meaning he severs it. So, the issue of separating a woman from her husband is one of the greatest and most dangerous sins. And in the hadith of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, a hadith in Ahmad and the Sunnah, the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said, the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said, he is not one of us who incites a woman against her husband. This means he corrupts her. The issue of the wife is very important. Whoever is given a peaceful home has half his life set right, and whoever is given an unhappy home has his whole life taken away. Because a person struggles during the day, struggling with the world and with people, so when he returns at night, he faces one of two situations: either his worries and sorrows increase. That's why many husbands flock to cafes, spending their mornings at work and their nights in cafes. The issue of the wife is very serious, especially if the husband is a man of faith or a man of great responsibility, such as a mujahid or someone in charge of the affairs of Muslims. In this case, the support the husband needs and the duty the wife has are far greater than in any other situation. He is a man of faith, a preacher, a leader, a fighter. His whole life is filled with worries, especially in our countries, our Arab countries. The problem with these systems is that if a man goes out to earn a living, that's difficult in our times. To provide for his family and children, he has to take risks and endure hardships. And if he manages to do so in an unstable, troubled home, then the triangle of evil is complete. I also want to say something truly corrupt: the entry of women into education and work, education that is not beneficial to women and work that is unsuitable for them. This, by God, is what has corrupted societies. In reality, it hasn't given women independence, a sense of self, or anything else. Instead, it has transferred them from the guardianship of their husbands to the guardianship of their managers. Therefore, you find women exhausting their talents trying to please their managers. I've seen this firsthand in We've witnessed women are more capable of absorbing
فهم الرجل أكثر من
anger, more understanding men
يعني أكثر
than men
تفهما
understand
للقضايا
them, and
أقل
more
طموحا. يعني من المثل
organized,
إذا أصدق
more
الشباب
patient,
إن
and
زوج
less
البنت هذا
ambitious.
أفضل ما
It's
تحصل عليه
well known among business owners
هيبقى
that hiring a woman
يعني
is better than hiring a man.
هيبقى هيشيل
Why?
المشروع
This
بنفسه.
young man wants
فإحنا
to get
بالنسبة
married
للرجل
and build a home, and if
عمل
he has
واحدة
some
فرصة
ambition,
العمل
he'll
كشريحة
want to
فلتكن
start his own business. So, for
هذا
him,
خطر.
you're a temporary situation. You, as an employer, as a company, are a temporary situation. But what about the woman? She wants to be financially independent. She doesn't have to worry about starting a business on her own, or being independent, or being content with a lower wage. Besides, if you get angry with a young man, you can't guarantee his reaction. But if you get angry with the woman, she can accept and absorb it. Of course, she might cry, but in the end, the truth is, those who brought women into the workforce extracted the qualities they were meant to spend on their husbands so they could spend them on their bosses. So, she's finished spending on her boss and goes home. She's become the boss of the house. Then she's back to being a man. So, there are two men in the house. She's become a woman to her boss and a man to her husband, a servant to her boss and a master to her husband. Even the matter of adornment and socializing is different. She spends
أنفقت على المدير وعلى الزملاء وعلى
on her
الجميع في
boss,
الشارع
her colleagues, the public in the street, and on
حتى
public
إذا أصبحت
transport.
البنت
Then, when she
ذهبت
goes
إلى
home,
كلية
her
الرجول.
femininity disappears and is replaced by
الآن المرأة صارت فتنة خارج
manliness.
البيت
I swear,
وتصل
means
إلى
that now women are a source of
الآن صارت
temptation
كل
outside
امرأة
the home,
مقياسة
not
برا
just within
الشارع.
it. Now, every woman is a source
دخلت
of
منافسة مع
temptation,
كل
and when
إنسان
she
آخر.
goes out into
أنت
the
كل رجل
street,
كل
she
إنسان
enters
آخر.
into competition with all the women on earth. What is it now? Everyone is
وبسبب
competing,
هذا
and from competition,
في
men are
مجتمعنا العربي
corrupted. Now,
الرجل
in
يطلع على امرأة
other
ذات جمال
societies,
وذات
a
دين
man would
من
not look at
زوجته.
her beautiful woman
الآن
except
الرجل يطلع في اليوم الواحد على ما لا
his
يقل عن
wife.
200
Now, a
300
man
امرأة
looks at more than one woman in a single day.
الآن
There
غير
are fewer than
المتزوجين
200 or
بالألفين
300 competing
يتزوجون
women. This is
بالمسلسلات
no less
والأفلام.
than that. This is the committed man, meaning the one who
المرء
doesn't
الخاسر في
have a
حياته
wife
للأسف
browsing movies, series,
المرأة
and
لما
other
تجد نساء
websites.
نساء
So, who
كثيرات
loses in this
ليس كثرة
competition? I
المنافسة
mean, when a woman starts
بل
competing
حقيقة
with all the
الدور
women
الذي
on
على
earth,
المرأة
who
ودور
loses in
الرجال
this
تركيز
competition?
المرأة
Therefore, the
وإنذار
truth
الرجل
is that the
وإرشادها
pressure on a
وتوجيهها
woman's
إلى
nerves and
الواجبات
her spirit,
لكي
and the
تكون
woman's
زوجته
obsession with
أفضل
showing
زوجة.
off her beauty and the compromises she makes to be more feminine and more attractive. All of this eats away at a woman's nerves and her spirit. And then, who brought women out in the first place? I mean, those who brought women out did so for their own purposes, not for their own benefit. One of the well-known rules in economics is that a woman who works in her home is an underutilized resource. A woman who works in her home is an
وأحيانا يضربوا مثل لطيف
underutilized resource. And sometimes they give a nice example, saying, for example, one woman cooks in her home fine, and another woman cooks in her
تريد أن المرأة دي تطبخ
home.
فين؟
Capitalism wants
المرأة
this
دي تطبخ
woman to
فين؟
cook
ليه؟
in this woman's home
عشان
and
يبقى في
the other
مصدر رأس
woman
مال
to
يبقى
cook
عندك
in her
زوجة
home.
تطلع جزء
Why
من
does
المال
she have to stay
عشان في
home?
الآخر يعني
So
المال
that there's a cycle of capital. Right now, when she cooks at home, her husband gives her money, she receives wages, but as a worker, she doesn't get paid. But when she goes to cook at another house, the second house gives her money, and the first house gives money to the second woman. So there's a movement of capital. Of course, in reality, no woman goes to that second house. You might find a woman going to work, spending an hour or two at a company, so she pays for transportation, she pays for everything, she pays for the jewelry she wears, the clothes she wears, and everything else. The government is collecting taxes on all this income, but if she stayed home and cooked, the government wouldn't collect taxes, and neither would cosmetics companies that don't benefit from women who don't leave the house, nor would those who work in advertising, the food industry, or fast food. The whole process based on taking people out True that whoever brought women out didn't do so for their benefit or to help them achieve independence, but rather for their own benefit. Of course, the communists were people who focused on work and its pillars, and now when they see 50% of society not working, but working at home, they say this is wasted and untapped potential. Therefore, they want women to go out and work in factories and farms. But what if this affects her? Does it affect her health? Let's discuss the details. Whether it affects her or not depends on her circumstances, the insults or difficulties she might face. Those who love to spread immorality among the believers, and God wants to accept your repentance, and those who follow their desires want you to deviate greatly. So, what I want to say now is that her woman, especially if she lives in the home of a preacher, a mujahid, or someone with a mission, has a greater duty. A woman's care for her home and husband is the best of deeds. The Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, when asked who has the greatest right over a woman, the woman said, her husband, and he didn't say her family or her children. The Prophet didn't even mention her children. Men are the protectors and maintainers of women. The majority of commentators agree that men are the rulers and masters of women. And by the way, if we talk about this issue, I know that many people will be put off by verses and hadiths related to women because we are now in an era where feminism has spread, even among religious women. Unfortunately, even among religious women, the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said, fear God concerning women, for they are captives in your hands. What does that mean? It means they are prisoners. So, how many women find this statement resonating with them or accept? And, of course, this is a big topic that requires many discussions and gatherings. Therefore, we are pleased with the mothers of the believers and the wives of the companions. May God be pleased with them all. This is a matter that requires a long discussion. Now, imagine that as soon as the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, was released from the siege, he experienced these two events: the death of Abu Talib and the death of Khadijah. May God be pleased with her. So, by the way, this is something we should follow through the biography. The Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, almost peace and blessings be upon him, for he never experienced complete joy. This is in accordance with his saying, peace and blessings be upon him. The most severely tested of people are the prophets, and our Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, was the best of people. God made his trials varied. Among the things we will follow in the biography is that the Prophet's joy was never complete. For example, his release from the siege. Now, regarding his mission, peace and blessings be upon him, the first thing he faced was the divorce of his two daughters. Now we will see his release from the siege. Abu Talib died and Khadijah died. There are many situations. Even when the Prophet was victorious at Badr, he returned from the victory to find his daughter Ruqayyah had been buried. News of the victory at Badr reached us, and the Prophet's daughter Ruqayyah had died. There are other matters, God willing, which we will discuss later, but follow us in the biography, and you will find that the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, never experienced complete joy. Now, we have two other matters of the intensification of the harm inflicted upon the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, and his departure.